Genetic experiments on cows goes horribly wrong on isolation. Explained. This movie is about a nice little rural Irish countryside nightmare involving botched mutation cow research. The mood is gloomy and somber, and the special effects are entirely practical and very realistic, painfully unfunny though. So, there are some distressing sequences with crazy cows being taken out. Shot completely on a tiny farm in Ireland throughout the winter, the sky remains dark. Rain appears frequently, isolation is important, and the color grading pushes it even farther to make everything unified and dismal. The seclusion is physical, and the film does an excellent job of establishing tension not just between the individuals and the unknown mutants, but also between the humans themselves. The desolate and dreary setting lends itself to the numerous classic images of light and dark shadows, dripping water, ugly dirt, and black pools. A rainstorm assists all of this. Being stranded on a farm with a lethal beast, this film is filled with blood, intestines, and cow uteruses. Yet, it is not gruesome in the typical sense. The gore in this film is not so much splattery as it is autopsy. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. A systematically planned experiment goes wrong. Isolation, 2005. The film takes a little time making headway, and the first half is mostly setup. The build-up, on the other hand, is really not dull, and the filmmaker creates tension by never actually telling us what is going on until it's absolutely essential and unavoidable. The second part of the film is quite different from the first, as we focus more on the action and gore, which really works well with the beginning of the film. While the second half of the picture is a fantastic sci-fi horror thriller, the first half is an unexpectedly ugly prestige drama about industrial farming. It's too well crafted to be called dull. There are not too many people in the picture, which means there just aren't many death scenes. Nevertheless, that is not too significant because the primary monster captures the audience, and the deaths caused by its spiny veins are appropriately unpleasant, though not very graphic. The mood of the surroundings is a significant standout, and the filmmaker does a wonderful job of ensuring that the farm site is crucial to the tale, and that effective use of the unclean and creepy sites is employed at all times. This pale green picture has an overall sense of melancholy and dread, as well as absolute despair, which keeps the occurrences less corny than they would have otherwise been. The atmosphere in this scene is tremendous, as things kept happening unexpectedly. It all began with an experiment in which cows were genetically manipulated to accelerate their development rate. Despite lengthy monitoring that appears to imply a successful transplant, the two scientists begin to suspect that the experiment did not proceed exactly as planned. Unknowingly, things take a bad turn when one of the scientists is bitten by the yet-to-be-understood beast that lives in the cow's guts and feeds on it. This raises suspicion, but no one can predict the nightmare that awaits them in the coming hours of horror.
Yes.
Maybe we should terminate it.
That calf looks normal.
The farm's seclusion is disrupted by two travelers, Mary and Jamie, who pitched up camp on the outskirts of his property. Both Mary and Jamie, as it is evident, do hold a secret, and they elevate the film since the reasons for traveling are plausible and intriguing. It is not explored as well as it could have been, and the film is a little too eager to abandon it later on, which is frustrating. Dan advises them to leave in a day, but is obliged to seek assistance when a pregnant cow gives birth suddenly. As they were not able to pull the calf out during the delivery, he calls Jamie for help, and the two of them end up giving birth to the animal.
It's breathing.
However, something is wrong, and the vet has to put both the calf and its mother down by distressfully shooting it with a cattle gun. She later makes a horrible discovery when dissecting the animal. The calf was already pregnant somehow, all while in the womb. The unexpected newborns were twisted, horrible-looking creatures. Luckily, they're all dead, right? A shallow movement of the newly born spiky creatures definitely springs bumps on one's skin. However, one of the bizarre hybrids escapes and attacks a cow and a human first. It is quickly recognized that there is a risk of human infection and the location is quarantined. However, one of the offspring is still alive and the next move must be calculated before it's too late.
She came back in the night without telling me. Don't go any closer!
Over the course of time, several of the characters are bitten by the creature. Their first fault? Dismissing the possibility of something unusual lingering around, even though their suspicions were raised. Several wounds are noticed on the cow's body, and this observation escalates as the situation gets worse. They start looking for the monster, but it is hidden in the murky water that is flooding the property. Dan advises driving a tractor through the water to frighten it away, but the tractor breaks down, forcing him to walk through the water to return. Soon, a dead body floats above. As they join the dots together, it is discovered that the creature has been living within the cows as if it were a parasite, consuming them from the inside and increasing in size.
The creature, it can infect humans. It's the bite.
A hunt for the beast and the lost calf began in order to prevent the illness from spreading to the farm. Once it is noticed that the thing is moving beneath the floorboards, there are attempts to pursue it, but the survivors are way too injured to do so. Hence, the responsibility now lies in team effort. A calf is discovered just as the new organisms emerge from its flesh. The calf is slaughtered, and within a short while, the newborn creatures are smashed to death. The larger creature then comes and follows them, but the farm machinery distracts the creature. However, one human gives himself up to save the others. Isolation begins with a woman's hand being mauled when it is being forced up a cow's backside. The graph scale is very intense. A bite eventually leads to a body being ripped apart with no insides in the gut to be found. A bite leads to several dead bodies. A bite might actually lead to an apocalyptic unreality. By the end of the movie, all hope is lost. Your ankles are tucked in and you are probably biting your nails by now. With the graphic scenes that depict the chase of the creature, it would definitely compel you to put on a blindfold but peek a bit, since the intriguing aspect to the question, how will one take the creature under control, and will its chaos ever end, remains constant. The end seems conventional, but you shouldn't buckle your belts since things are going to get worse now. Giving up one's livelihood, saving a friend, or finding an escape for yourself. Multiple dilemmas are faced that eventually intensify the dramatic climax of the film. A motivating character, which you should have probably guessed by now, is determined to kill the creature that is growing into a beast. It refuses to give up. It faces situations where the brink of death is explicit. A grotesque blood splatter ends the chase. However, is it that simple? What if the spiny and bony flesh-feeding creature finds a powerful host at last and terminates generations?
You have a perfectly normal baby.
To make it simpler for you all, Isolation basically tells the story of how genetic tinkering results in mutant killer cows that moo and then devour people. More particularly, our honest farmer learns that his extremely pregnant cow has given birth to bad-tempered calf who bites the fingers off those who are dumb enough to pet it, such as himself and a veterinarian. The calf's bowels are absolutely inaccurate but true, and it is also pregnant. The entrails show small pouches of malformed, boneless, internal out-cow fetuses. They are still living and starving. Obviously, one escapes and begins terrorizing the scientist, farmer, veterinarian, and a pair of eloped lovers who come to the land. The film projects a few images of cattle being slaughtered, causing the farmer much anguish, which appear to be inspired by the relatively recent foot-and-mouth epidemics.
Numbers like your fucking lab rats! Owner's dead! You've killed my farm! Hear me?
However, some of the lingering photos of the group staring at an upturned, flaming cow are almost comedic, and you feel a little sympathy for the farmer who allowed a lunatic scientist to mess with his livestock in the first place. The spiny creature crawls its way around a mine of watery cow dung and explicit scenes of blood-splattered birth and death, to sniff blood and bite the flesh. Every moment makes you want to snuggle up and stay warm and clean, simply to get away from the horrifying scene on the screen. The scenario in which someone visits Dan's farm seeking the two stowaways, with one of them in close vicinity, represents danger from outside of the farm that is just not anti-human in nature, but might mean tragedy only for certain people. The situation is stressful enough and even works as a foreshadowing of the concepts and problems that the character would face, just a few moments away from being caught.
Stay away from me.
No, Jamie.
We're going now.
The film is rather compelling to watch and powerful, and at first the film appears to relate to so many others, such as John Carpenter's The Thing, to Ridley Scott's Alien, and even Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But as the film approaches its troubling conclusion, you start realizing that everything is developed in order to establish a fresh experience of its own. The film's goals and concepts are all in the correct places. the formation of two different groups of individuals that will ultimately come together is an intriguing one, which projects an inspiration from something like Assault on Precinct 13, but with a lot less hatred. Isolation could also be called a parody of the horrific animated television series South Park. The film's ending is a lousy replica of Ridley Scott's classic Alien, with the last few survivors attempting to escape contact with a seldom seen creature. If there is an attempt to conceptualize this film, it is a combination of Alien 1979 with its blood-sucking creatures that pop out of tummies, and its water-dripping, chain-jangling visual effects and sounders. The Thing 1982, with the slim design of the monsters, and then the whole genetic experiments gone horribly wrong on a farm reeks of Black Sheep 2006. Apart from the fact that it is a farm, which has not been used before, the concept of multiple individuals being trapped in a location is nothing new. Isolation is a film which the tension develops as the seriousness of the situation worsens. It is a thriller in which the repercussions of experimenting leave nothing to the creative interpretation, and it is a film in which, while it does not provide all of the answers, it provides enough to form conclusions. It is a winning strategy. Furthermore, there are moments in the film that throw light on the experiment, yet the picture is never weighed down by exposition. It enables the audience to watch while they evaluate who is accountable and why, which is more powerful than just being designed to be self-explanatory. The narrative, like most monster films, is cliched, and the supporting characters are mostly two-dimensional, but it's the slow build atmospherics and persistent sense of despair and hopelessness that give this gritty film its actual edge.
Dan! You killed Jamie, Dan!
Since the advent of advanced genetic engineering in the 1970s, science fiction has struggled with some of technology's most perplexing questions. Is genetic experimentation ethical? Can it drastically improve human existence? And, most importantly, what are some of the logical worst-case scenarios? The cornerstone of evolution is genetic change. Since the globe is subjected to radiation, all creatures change and are transformed. Radiation causes DNA to break down, the damage is healed and is frequently followed by recombination. This variation is what gives rise to diversity in individual species and the globe as a whole. Genetic modification films have spanned many subgenres, including comedy, horror, thriller, and mystery, but they will always be classified as science fiction. Isolation is a mutant killer animal film, the latest in a long line of gritty films about mutant killer piranhas, cats, crocodiles, bees, spiders, flies, earthworms, and even frogs. O'Brien takes his time setting the basis for his bioengineering narrative, immersing watchers in the physical obscurity of a pregnant cow care, then gradually allowing the creature to take hold and dominate the central theme of the story. It can be said that the film intends to make a statement against animal experiments or cloning or something, but it simply ends up being a splatterfest, and not a particularly terrifying one at that. Since the preponderance of the blood imagery is limited to the execution of farmhouse livestock, those specific sequences feel out of the place and distract from the true horror come splatter.
What? Just a possibility.
Infection! What infection?
I'm not sure yet.
As the movie deals with the results of genetic experimentation, there are creatures who not only serve as a graphic depiction of such, but their horrific appearance could not have been more apt, given that the film deals with the deterioration and devastation of the human body. This really is intriguing because it shows that although there are techniques to battle infection, it may be easier said than done. As a result, the film's depiction of isolation becomes all the more disturbing. The tone is gloomy, yet mysterious, making for a stressful cinematic experience considering the emphasis on solitude. The menace is obscured by darkness, and the spooky tune heightens the sense of someone being isolated, with no or little possibility of escape. It really does put you on the edge. The Monster. Genetic experiments on cows on an Irish farm to shorten pregnancy durations culminates in the birth of a mutant calf, which is revealed to be pregnant with 6 bony creatures when it is examined by a doctor, one of which survives and develops into a full-size monster. Cow spawns are huge multi-limbed animals with flexible spinal cords that resemble centipedes. They have red meaty skin and many sharp spikes on their sides. The effects used to create the creature were pretty intriguing, and they chose a really unusual appearance in the film, both with the fetuses and the mature creature itself. To gain power and grow larger, the beast dined on cows. It gradually shifted its focus to human flesh, wreaking havoc on the farm. The monsters consumed the insides of live organisms. The frightening aspect was when it realized that the sickness induced by the creature's bite would be inherited by future generations, and a day would come when an entire generation would be wiped off the face of the world. The creature is not observed murdering anybody. It's inferred that it did, but it doesn't take any interest in indiscriminately killing individuals. There is some gratuitous violence, a lot of cow guts, and some blood splashes while the creature is kept in the shadows. The monster does look terrific though, and the graphic nature of the body horror adds another unpleasant element to a vile film. Why should you watch this movie? Isolation is a sluggish thriller with a few outstanding highlights, although it's unsettling and engrossing enough to keep your interest. A dark, disgusting, and fantastically gross horror film about mutant cows and the poor folks trapped on a remote farm with the bleeding dairy cattle. Isolation is a claustrophobic, progressively filthy thriller that is as frightening for its underlying themes as it is for the more immediate thrills it presents on screen. The Parasite allows for a lot of wonderful, clumpy, disgusting, and impactful moments to shine through, making the hunt seem stronger and more dramatic, especially in the isolated farmhouse, which acts as a safe, sheltered space for the creature to grow and harbor the whole farm for its crave of flesh and blood. The camera work is the classic work of O'Brien, who employs flashy effects to establish the rawness of the situation. However, it's not appealing to everyone. The taste in the camera work is very specific. On the flip side, it is this very flashy work that intensifies the cruelty and gross nature of the chaos that the creature has created in the farmland. Its build-up cannot be called the best cinematic build-up in history, but it does enough to keep things intriguing, which delivers all the best portions when the time comes to murder them off. Even though it seems that one has to rack their brains a lot and clarify what's happening and what these scientific tests and experiments are about, it is just a simple film about aliens infiltrating an Irish farm to find a host to gain power. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Come on!